why I turned down a job offer for a rather large media company to instead go to a startup. Let's discuss it, shall we? So one of the main reasons why I think I want to chat about this today on the channel is just to really show that younger people do still have options when applying to jobs. You don't have to always scrap for the first thing you see, because as we know, the job market right now is a really treacherous place. Obviously, we can talk about the Great Resignation all we want, but what that does offer is really great opportunity for people like me to get their foot in the door at larger organisations, but also to really further their education and also further their learning and development by working for a smaller organisation as well. Now, there's obviously pros and cons for working for a very large media organisation or marketing firm. Working for a company in the S&P 500, for example, there's obviously massive benefits attached to that, but I would argue that there are even more benefits attached to working for a smaller independent startup company for the reasons that we're going to go into right now. One of the main things that attracted me more to work inside of a startup versus this big media company. Now, bearing in mind, this is my anecdotal experience off of 2 job offers I had at the same time. One, the exact same money. I negotiated the startup company's salary to match this big company. So a little bit of negotiation from my end there, so a pat on the back for myself. But yeah, essentially I had 2 job offers for the exact same salary, the exact same benefits almost. Is something we're going to go into, for basically the exact same job role. And as I took a step back to really think about what I want in my career, I want a storyline. I want to be able to go to a big company in 4, 5, 6 years time and say, hey, I jumped ship here to go here for this reason. I really wanted there to be a defined storyline and to really have, and to show that I wasn't chasing company names or titles or whatever. It's mainly for my own learning and development. That's a storyline I want to portray, and I will be portraying in future job applications. I picked the startup company because there were more learning and development and growth opportunities over what I would have had at the big media corporation that I had a job offer for. So what are these learning and development opportunities? The main one is simply, as the startup business grows, my role grows. My experience working for large corporations thus far has been you sort of really have to put in triple, quadruple the amount of effort you should do to even be considered for some sort of raise or promotion. And company results don't determine whether your position will be upgraded or change in any way. Whereas what I identified with the startup company I'm currently working for now is that once certain goals within the organisation start to come to fruition, my role will expand to match those responsibilities that comes with more clients and more work and more responsibility in general. So it's almost like I don't have to do anything apart from my day-to-day. It's a tiny bit more of a guarantee that I will be able to progress title-wise. For example, my current role as marketing executive, I'm already in training to become a marketing manager because our team is so small and margins are so thin to where we can't really bring on a senior marketing manager already, because obviously their salaries are quite high at the minute, especially during this whole Great Resignation period. So it makes sense for the company to take a junior individual or a more junior individual such as myself and give them the learning and development resources necessary to develop me or a certain individual into a marketing manager so they can fit inside the role. They don't have to do any of this introduction nonsense for 3 months and give them a grace period. They can sort of just chuck me inside the role and ask me to perform. And because I know the inner workings of the business already, I've been here nearly a year, it makes it very easy for me to understand the new roles and responsibility and then be able to take action on that. And that was the main caveat of me picking the startup company over a big corporation, is if the big corporation makes 200% profit, my role is not going to change. If the startup company makes 200% profit, then my role, then I'm basically guaranteed a promotion. Now, from a learning and development perspective, one of the really big things that swayed my opinion on picking the startup over the big organisation is mentorship opportunities. I've already got 2 mentors, very senior marketing managers that work for some really big agencies in the UK, and they are mentoring me. And that whole scenario and that whole, because a mentor is so much more valuable than taking some course or whatever, because you are learning from people that have done it for 10, 20, 25 years. And a course or a piece of e-learning isn't really going to answer certain questions I have in an internal marketing level. So I have 2 individuals that I have an hour conversation with every single month. So that's 2 hours a month of mentoring that I receive. Some people might say that's not really a lot. My mentor seeing me every 2 weeks or every week or whatever. The hour is so much more valuable. I would pick those 2 hours over any sort of course or e-learning that a bigger company could put me on. And that's one thing I knew I would get inside of the startup environment, is that obviously talent is a lot less abundant in the sense of most people just want to chase brand names and business names and identities rather than sort of graft inside of a startup environment to create a storyline. So I do get rewarded with that, with a whole host of learning and development that I simply would not get at a big organization. If I went to this big media agency, they've returned hundreds of millions every single year for sure. If I went to them and say, hey, can I have a mentor, blah, 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 they wouldn't. They have to cater for like 2,500, 3,000 other employees. They're not going to take my request over the other 1,000 people that would hold the same title as me. And that leads me on to the third point of is just being an individual, just having something that is so completely different. And on my CV, I'm going to have a company name that people aren't going to really recognize straight away. Sure, it's not Google, it's not Facebook, it's not a big recognizable media agency or big marketing firm. But what it is a very high impact, high growth startup company. And those they are buzzwords and they are annoying, and I do understand just high impact and quick growth and all this nonsense. But when I build it into a storyline inside of an interview to say that I have received, I will be at the age of like probably 23, 24 when I move on to a bigger organization to get the Skrilla, I'll be able to formulate my experiences in a way that show the future employer that I really, really care about my own learning and development, and I care about growing as an individual and being able to give my best to the company and the best to my work on a day-to-day basis. And having that storyline of not going for a big name but going for a small name, but it's going to offer me so much development at such an early age, that is super attractive to employers. And also the idea of where there's most probably a certain big job that I apply to in the future, or when I start applying for more senior roles, it's going to be a thing of where probably 80% of people's CVs are going to look exactly the same in terms of what sort of companies they have worked for, what sort of roles they have had, what sort of processes and goals they have achieved. And then if I sort of barge in saying I worked at this high impact startup, we've had 300% client growth in the last 6 months, I've helped to boost conversion rates on social by 6-7%. I've helped to boost impressions by well over 400-500%. I've put processes together that are getting us in mainstream news, etc. when people didn't know about us before. The whole shebang. It's actually just it's not just explaining processes. It's explaining tangible achievements. And I believe these things are much more attractive to a potential employer because they are just going to be sort of hearing, I do this on a day-to-day basis, I've achieved this, we've had this rate of growth. They're going to be the same things where if I come in with some crazy numbers, but they can also back up those numbers because that's what a startup environment is stupidly high growth. That's going to make me a bit more of a standout as I move into these bigger roles eventually. One thing I want to touch on as well is just personal values. I feel like people my age are starting to sort of realise that they don't just have to be a number. They can actually have a position inside of a company where they're making really, really a big tangible impact on a whole industry, let alone just the company. I feel like sort of the day and age of just being a bit of a button presser are sort of gone, in the sense of I feel like a lot of people are just sort of chasing actual experience rather than just a monotonous 8-hour day that's going to give them a salary to pay their bills. A lot of people this is being proven by the Great Resignation in general. A lot of young people are simply leaving their job roles because company isn't sustainable, and that's a really big one. Or if a company isn't providing great learning and development opportunities, or if the company culture is a bit wonky, people just up and leaving. People in their early mid-20s are really, really not afraid to just up and leave because they know that because of this whole work from home setup and everything we have going on, we do have the ability just to go out and get another position somewhere else. And the personal working values inside of the startup were levels above. Levels above what this big media organization was telling me, because I was talking to a representative of the manager who has a manager who has a manager who is the assistant to the CEO. Like, that's a bit too low level, whereas with the startup, I was being interviewed by the CEO himself, someone who has been in this industry for well over 40 years, double the time I've been alive, and he's made his millions. He's done. He can retire any single day, and he can live a happy life. But he's continuing to push and to strive for greater things, which that is a mentor in itself. I get mentored every single day just by hopping in the team meetings every morning and all this sort of stuff. And it's just overall the process is so much more fulfilling and valuable. And I feel like the day-to-day work I'm doing is having a really big impact. You know, I'm not sending work off to someone to get checked and then it gets sent to editorial and then it gets sent to social media manager and then it gets sent to that person's marketing manager to review and blah. I'm doing the work. I'm getting it checked and looked over by one person. That might take 10 minutes. Then it's going out to the general public. That is a hell of a lot more rewardable and a hell of a lot more fulfilling than sending something off and not seeing the fruits of my own labour for a week. But yeah, without keeping this video too long, I think it's definitely like a sort of a podcast topic that really could be good if I had like 3 or 4 other people my own age. I feel like that would be like a really good podcast episode if I had a podcast. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I mean, what is it? It's been 12:30 in the middle of a work day. I'm supposed to be eating my lunch that I haven't made yet and I'm making a video instead. But you know, the grind is real. But yeah, I hope I sort of explained myself well. There are a couple key things I mentioned in this video that are really swayed my opinion. You know, personal values and mentorship and the learning and development is basically the main caveats of why I picked and why I will most probably, at least in the short term, continue to pick a startup environment over a big corporation. Also, the fact that I'm happy to negotiate. I don't mind negotiating a better pay package and better benefits or whatever. And there's more wiggle room to do that inside of a startup environment. So, but yeah, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like, comment down below your experiences. If you had any questions, you know, or you just wanted to maybe facilitate some sort of discussion, feel free to do that in the comment section down below. I'm always about to have a chat. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel and I'll see you guys in a bit. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all stay safe. I'll see you in a bit.